Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Happy Thursday, everybody. First up for today, we have two major developments in the ongoing US-China technology competition to cover. And first of these, a former Google employee has been arrested in the United States on charges of theft of AI-related trade secrets. Mr. Ding, a PRC national, allegedly stole hundreds of files related to Google's AI infrastructure and sent them to two China-based firms. One he founded, the other he had equity in. Some of the trade secrets are related to fairly critical and advanced AI technology, including chip architecture and software design specs for an unreleased next-generation technology. According to the indictment, Ding, 38, a resident of Newark, California, quote, transferred sensitive Google trade secrets and other confidential information from Google's network to his personal account while secretly affiliating himself with PRC-based companies in the AI industry, end quote. U.S. Attorney Ismail Ramsey, in a statement yesterday, expressed that while Ding was employed as a software engineer at Google, quote, he was secretly working to enrich himself and two companies based in the People's Republic of China by stealing Google's trade secrets about its artificial intelligence supercomputing systems. Ding gave himself and the companies that he was affiliated with in the PRC an unfair competitive advantage. This office is committed to protecting the innovation of our Silicon Valley companies. To that end, we will aggressively investigate and prosecute the theft of sensitive trade secrets by insiders like Ding, including criminal efforts to start up illegitimate competition, end quote. According to the indictment, Google hired Ding as a software engineer in 2019. Ding's responsibilities included developing the software deployed in Google's supercomputing data centers. In connection with his employment, Ding was granted access to Google's confidential information related to the hardware infrastructure, the software platform, and the AI models and applications they supported. The indictment alleges that on May 21, 2022, Ding began secretly uploading trade secrets that were stored in Google's network by copying the information onto a personal Google Cloud account. The indictment adds that Ding continued periodic uploads until May 2, 2023, by which time Ding allegedly uploaded more than 500 unique files containing confidential information. The second of these two developments is related to TikTok. This week, a bipartisan group of lawmakers introduced a bill that would force ByteDance, the Chinese technology company that owns TikTok, to sell the app due to national security concerns. Representative Mike Gallagher, chair of the House Select China Committee, and Raja Krishnamurthy co-authored legislation that would give ByteDance 165 days to divest from TikTok or face a ban from US app stores. The legislation would also expand the president's power to ban or restrict apps deemed concerning to national security. The bill would effectively force ByteDance to sell TikTok if they want to stay in the US market. Some have expressed skepticism around whether Congress has the political will to pass such a law, especially in an election year. But it may just have legs. Previous congressional efforts to ban TikTok had been unsuccessful, particularly after some lawmakers raised concerns about any prohibition infringing on free speech. One commentator also pointed out that there has been a wave of lobbying firms dropping PRC clients. If the same happens to TikTok, then the draft bill has an even stronger chance of succeeding. According to a statement from the House Select Committee on the Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party, the bill prevents app store availability or web housing services in the US for ByteDance-controlled applications, including TikTok, unless the application severs ties to entities like ByteDance that are subject to the control of a foreign adversary as defined by Congress. In addition, the bill creates a process for the president to designate certain specifically defined social media applications that are also subject to the control of a foreign adversary. The bill defined control by a foreign adversary as a business with a minimum 20% stake held directly or indirectly by a foreign adversary, or with headquarters that are in or subject to direction by a foreign adversary. UK-based Financial Times reports today that one congressional aide said the bill was a monumental moment and that there was a huge groundswell of bipartisan support for the measure on Capitol Hill. US-based outlet Punchbowl News reports today that the White House itself has provided lawmakers with technical assistance when they were drafting the bill. The outlet writes that, quote, having support from the Biden administration, which has undergone a sharp internal debate over TikTok's future, according to multiple Democratic and GOP sources on the Hill, is big, end quote. It's big because previous congressional efforts to ban TikTok didn't have White House backing. A TikTok spokesperson described the bill as, quote, an outright ban on TikTok, end quote, adding that it would trample on First Amendment rights and affect 170 million American users and 5 million small businesses on the platform in the US. Commentators have pushed back, though, arguing that none of this will happen if they sever ties with Beijing. But even if the bill is passed, this does raise certain questions. Quote, one question I have is how feasible a divestment actually is given the multi-$10 billion check and the technical and operation expertise required by an acquirer. How many potential buyers may be out there? An even more fundamental question may be whether or not PRC policymakers would allow ByteDance to sell TikTok and its algorithms to a US firm. End quote. Indeed, Alex Capri, a senior lecturer at the University of Singapore, expressed this week that the Chinese government would block the sale even if ByteDance and other mainland investors were forced to divest their shares. If this is the case, it really does undermine TikTok's claim that it isn't influenced at all by Beijing, or that Beijing doesn't have any interest in this technology company. State media isn't helping TikTok much either, with several fiery commentaries this week calling TikTok a Chinese company. State-run Global Times, for example, writes today that, quote, TikTok is not just a Chinese company investing and operating in the US, but an important platform for the US to catch up with the global trend of digitalization, end quote. Next up, we have one more development to cover, but just quickly, if you enjoyed today's episode of China Update, I have a huge favor to ask. Liking and subscribing. This is the only way in which the channel can grow. It keeps the algorithm happy and is a huge help for me. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are also in the description below for those who want to help keep the channel financially sustainable. I rely primarily on subscriber support rather than corporate sponsorship. So if you'd like to help me keep the channel growing and keep the channel independent, this is a huge help. Thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. Next up, the China Rural Government's Research Center at Wuhan University and the Communication Survey Research Center under the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, Beijing-based and controlled think tank, conducted a survey over the Lunar New Year period called Beware of the Pseudo-Middle Class Trap: The Progress and Regression of Urban and Rural Life. The survey report looks at the challenges that rural residents working in cities face and warns policymakers that if the issues of this cohort of hundreds of millions, including the widening disparities between urban and rural workers, are not addressed, it will lead to severe economic and even political consequences. Hong Kong-based South China Morning Post, citing the report, writes that many of China's rural residents, who for years sought middle-class prosperity by becoming urban migrants, now feel trapped between two unenviable choices: stay in villages with insufficient resources, or move to population centres with poor employment prospects. Quote, a no-win situation which threatens to impede the country's plans for rural revitalisation and its efforts to narrow the lifestyle gap, end quote. The China Rural Governance Research Center report argues that, though it has brought benefits, China's rapid urbanization has also led to pressing issues in rural areas, including insufficient access to care for the elderly, rising divorce rates, and declining fertility. We end today's video by quoting some of the report. The survey shows that while Chinese society is advancing into an era of integrated urban-rural development, the underlying social logic faces challenges, such as the risk of elderly people being left isolated due to village hollowing out, and the sharp decline in family reproductive capacity due to family fragmentation. One aspect of the pseudo-middle class lifestyle trap is that it has become increasingly difficult for rural areas to support a high-quality life. The hollowing out of villages is becoming more prominent, leading to the disintegration of village communities, weakening of normal governance and self-governance functions, and shrinkages of cultural public spaces. The analysis of survey data shows that 30% of respondents reported their villages were in a state of severe hollowing out, and 44% reported their villages were in a state of moderate hollowing out. Thus, villages experiencing either severe or moderate hollowing out accounted for the very high proportion of 73.8%, almost 4 out of every 5 towns and villages. Another aspect of the pseudo-middle class lifestyle trap is that after rural residents urbanize, income from employment becomes their main source of income. The analysis of survey data shows that 43% of respondents reported that after this happens, it is difficult to find any employment. Here ends the direct quote. We remember, of course, that this cohort is numbered in the hundreds of millions, and it is with studies like this that we can see how it is that Li Keqiang just a few years ago during the COVID lockdown warned of over 600 million Chinese living on less than $5 a day. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a good Thursday, and I will see you all tomorrow.